Hi folks, Dr. P here. This is Math 10C, Linear Functions, Topic 3, Example 3 on page 34 in your workbooks. So here we're asked to determine the equation of a linear function from a graph. In the first question, they're asking us to find the Y-intercept. The Y-intercept is the location where the graph is crossing the y-axis, which is right there. So the y-intercept here is going to be y equals, and the y-coordinate right there is 1, 2, 3. The y-intercept is 3. The slope, so we're going to be using the rise over run technique here. We can start at this point right here. And then the rise is 1, 2, 3. So rise is 3. And run is going from this point here to until we hit the line. The run is 2. So rise over run. So the slope here is rise over run. The rise was 3. The run was 2. State the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form is y equals, then we have the slope, so 3 over 2 times x plus the y-intercept. The y-intercept was 3. Okay. In the last question here, D, use technology to check your equation. So here we're going to be using our graphing calculators. So there's your graphing calculator. And what we're going to be doing here is we're going to graph it and check whether the visual on the graphing calculator looks the same as the visual provided here. The way to graph on these calculators is to start by pressing the Y equal button, top left corner, like that. The cursor is up here blinking right next to y1, so we can actually graph several functions. We're only going to use y1 here. We're going to enter here the following function. So 3 over 2 is a fraction, but it's also a division. So we're going to enter that as 3 divided by 2. And then the x is here on your calculators. It's a button that has a bunch of symbols on them, one of them being the x. So we press x and it gives us a capital X. And then plus 3. We've entered the function. Now we press graph. And there is our linear function. If we look really closely, we can see that the y-intercept is 1, 2, 3, so which is the same as we had before when it was graphed in the workbook here. The x-intercept, so the location right here where the graph is crossing the x-axis, in the workbook it's at -2, and it appears here as well if you look really carefully that this line here is crossing the x-axis at -2. Another thing we want to notice here is that if we look at our graph in the workbook, the maximum value along the x-axis, so 5 is here, so it goes up to 6. Same thing along the y-axis. The maximum value along the y-axis is 6. The minimum value along the x-axis would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So -6 down here, and the minimum value along the y-axis is -6. On the graphing calculator, the default maximum and minimum, both along the x and the y-axis, is -10 to +10. We can check that and we can change that if we press the window button right here. Here tells us that the minimum value currently along the x-axis is -10, and then goes up to a maximum x value of 10. And same thing along the y-axis. Y-min is -10, Y-max is +10. So I'm going to change these values here so that they are the same as the values in our workbook. So instead of -10, I'm going to clear that. I'm going to put in -6. Note that for the negative sign, I use this button down here, the very bottom. A negative sign in this calculator is not the same thing as a minus sign. So don't be using a minus sign for a negative sign. Then we're going to go down with this arrow here. We're going to clear out the +10 and replace it with +6. Then we go down to y-min, clear that out, and put in -6. and then the Y max is positive 6. And now if we press the graph button, we get a graph that is identical to the graph that we have in the workbook, including the scale on the X and the Y axis. Okay, so this question here is done. Let's look at example 4. So same sort of thing. Oops. Right there. If I can scroll. Okay, so okay, so we want to state the Y-intercept. The Y-intercept is right here where we're crossing the Y-axis. So the Y-intercept here is going to be positive 4. The slope, we're going to be doing the rise over run again. So remember that, so we have to pick 2 points along the graph. So we can pick the 2 points that are given to us. Remember that we always start with the left point. Okay, so we start with the left point, and this time the rise is going 1, 2, 3 steps down. So that means our rise is negative 4. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, negative 3. Negative 3. We're going 3 steps down. And then the run is 1 step to the right. So run is 1. That means that our slope, our rise over run, rise is negative 3 this time, and the run is 1. This is the same thing as a slope of negative 3. So now we can state the equation in slope-intercept form. So it's going to be y equals the slope, which is negative 3, times x plus the y-intercept, which was 4. And now we're going to check this on the graphing calculator again. So we pull up our graphing calculator. We go back into our y equal menu right here, top left corner. And now we can see that that first equation is still there. We want to get rid of this one. Just press clear. We're going to put in the new one. So negative 3 times x plus 4. We graph it. And yes, it has a negative slope, so it goes down from left to right, just like in the workbook. And if we take a look at our scale along the x and the y-axis, we can see along the x-axis we're going from what appears to be perhaps negative 2 and a bit. We're going to say negative 2 up to 4. So we're going to change our window settings. So our x-min here, we're going to change that to negative 2. My x max, I'm going to change that to 4, so that is closer to what we see in the figure. And along the y-axis, we go from negative 5 to positive 5. So from negative 5, a minimum y value, up to a maximum of 5. We graph it again, and we want to verify that our y-intercept up here is at 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, it is. And our x-intercept is somewhere between 1 and 2. Along the x-axis, which it is. So we're good. That's a wrap. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and may the math be with you. See ya.